Clubs at every level of the football pyramid are becoming smarter and more efficient. How? The use of data.
To hell with conventional wisdom. The way we've been doing it has not been working.
Analysts are now recording data from thousands of actions during games and training sessions to help shape pre-match preparation and post-game debriefs, pinpoint transfer targets and develop young talent.
The genie is out of the bottle. I don't think it's going back in.
We may know more about the opposition than they actually know about themselves.
The growing use of analytics in football has attracted criticism and cynicism.
These are athletes, they're not spreadsheets.
Battle lines have been drawn between the analysts and the traditionalists. Can football be translated into numbers by data bots, or does it require special insight from real football men? In 2002, one of the most unfashionable teams in Major League Baseball, the Oakland Athletics, defied the odds to go on a record-breaking 20-game winning streak. Their success was powered by a new approach to player recruitment, sabermetrics.
Well, it started out as, I'd played for 10 years professionally, and so when I stopped playing, I entered the front office, and I started reading this stuff. Again, the baseball academics, and it made sense to me. And I had my own experience with which to look at both sides. I came from a traditional baseball background as a player, and now I was reading this new stuff that sort of put player performance in order for me. It was very rational. I could see why a baseball team was good. You could look at numbers and explain why they were good instead of sort of looking at things anecdotally and trying to use non-quantifiable reasons to apply success. We were one of the smallest teams in the league. We were actually losing money. But it also created a great platform. It meant that if we just did things the same way the New York Yankees, aka the Manchester United did, we were destined to finish where our player wages said we should. If you had the lowest payroll, you were probably going to finish in last. So we had the opportunity, because we had nothing to lose, to implement something differently.
The success of the Oakland A's encouraged sports teams around the world to replicate the model pioneered by Billy Beane. Early adopters believed the Moneyball approach could give them an advantage over their competitors.
We knew it worked on individual players, and we were able to apply it to the whole team. We won four division titles, 3 division titles and a wild card. We're averaged almost close to 96, 97 wins per year. And so we had immediate success. But the biggest thing, the most important thing, is we understood why we were successful, and we understood where we went wrong. I mean, the numbers would show us.
Billy Beane had the huge luxury of not looking at relegation. Right? If you don't have to look at relegation, you can try all kinds of stuff.
Analytics and big data are driving the strategies of major corporations around the world. And these methods are now filtering into football, from the boardroom to the boot room.
Football clubs over the last 10, 15 years have had to deal with a technological revolution. What that's meant is they've now started to collect through third-party vendors lots and lots of data on football. And that those data primarily originally were collected for fans and for media outlets to use. They've made their way into the clubs themselves, and now you have football departments that have to contend with what's kind of an avalanche of information.
Sports data is basically a reconstruction of the match. Okay, so why do we collect data? It's basically so we can tell a story of how the match is played. And so you can look through it in various lenses. So you could have just event data, how many passes and shots. But as we know in football, it's not a great reconstruction. But if we had the tracking data, so if we can see the dots run around, we can basically reconstruct the game in a better way.
It's like having a scout at every game. And not just having a scout at every game, because we're collecting data on everything that the player is doing on the field. It's like having a scout for every player in every game, because everything they do is recorded.
Now it's not so much about collecting the data, it's making sense of that data.
The stakes are high at the top of the footballing pyramid, but lower down, one bad season can have catastrophic repercussions. Small clubs with limited budgets can't afford to make a mistake. To reduce the risk of acquiring a dud signing, they're turning to Beane's sophisticated sabermetric approach.
So I like to try and get to the training ground as often as I can and help out with the guys down there. But a lot of the time I'm based here in Eco Tricity. with a 4-screen setup. I'm surrounded by a lot of energy traders, and at times there's £1 million deals getting made, and I'm sat here watching League 2 football and providing analysis. So it's a pretty unusual workplace and probably quite different to a lot of analysts in the Football League, but it's good.
So here at Ecotricity, I'm the Chief Operating Officer. In energy trading, we buy and sell energy, mostly buy, to meet the needs of our customers on a day-to-day basis. We're able to take a lot of the skills and the data analysis that we undertake in the trading front of energy into the world of football. So we saw it as an opportunity to be creative in the data and analytical space and see if we can form a competitive advantage at a lower level. It wasn't really necessarily about budgets, but it was about trying to maximise what we can get out of every single player that we recruit, trying to bring together a list of players that is the best from the manager's eye and augmenting that with the data. And also performance-wise, we just wanted to understand all aspects of our performance. So it's essentially doing the same thing in business and taking that into the world of football.
The Billy Beane story is really originally a story about player recruitment and finding inefficiencies in the market on the back of going against conventional wisdom, really. They used data to try and scout players, to try to find players that no one else wanted, that were able to do things that would help the team win.
Manchester United and Burnley are very different clubs despite the fact that they play in the same league, and as a result, Burnley has to take a very different approach to putting together a team than Manchester United.
There's a lot of money being spent, but for more the mid-level clubs, you know, there should be bargains available. So if they're smart with the data, and if they look through it with a certain lens, they could be able to find some gems out there.
Yeah, this is where all your goals have come from.
So a lot of them are in the 6-yard box. So
we get the ball to you in there. That's where you're
dangerous. That's my bread and butter. Yeah.
The recruitment side for a small club, like you say, is really, really key, and it's important that we're different. In January, every club will be after the same players, and probably we can't compete for those players that everyone's after, so we have to find other types of players, and we have a different way of playing, and we have to find players that can fit into that, and we have to use the data for that.
Yeah, I think the one I would definitely pick out is Christian Doidge. You know, he's been our top scorer last year, he's our top scorer this year. I think he's second or third highest goal scorer in the top 6 English leagues in 2017.
Well, yeah, I think Christian's done better than we have envisaged, but we knew that the basics were there. We knew he could score goals. We knew he got in the right positions on the pitch because his data showed that, and it was then a case of us trying to work with him how to convert those chances from the positions he got into, which his data showed. So that one is proof of the data works. I mean, the value for money on that one, to say we paid £30,000 for him, and he's worth an awful lot more than that now. Tom, who looks after the data, you know, I'll give him a list of targets, and he'll go through them and give us graphs in terms of their, you know, value and what they're good at, what they're not good at, what their metrics are in terms of if it's a striker, goals, expected goals.
As analytics evolves, new metrics arrive, and some are more widely accepted than others. Expected goals is one example of such a seemingly divisive tool. So what exactly does it mean?
It's a measuring tool of the probability of that shot from that specific location and resulting in a goal. So we look at thousands of different shots that occurred in League 1, League 2 and National League, so we make it relevant to our level of football. We'll then apply where it was on the pitch, the angle, the distance, was it a headed shot, was it a shot with the feet, how was it assisted? Put all those things into a algorithm that will then produce a number which will tell us how likely that is to result in a goal. If the expected goal is 0.15, 15% of the time, a shot from that location will result in a goal.
Well, it makes me feel a lot better about myself because my expected goals is a lot less than what I'm achieving at the moment, so that's good for me. Well, I just think football's changing, and you've got to, any little inch you can get, it helps out massively, and it might be the difference at the end of the season and between getting promoted or relegated. I had 9 games without a goal this season, and the manager pulled me and said, listen, he said, I don't want you to go, I know we're having bad results at the moment, but I don't want you to try and get involved and do stuff which you're not as good as. He said, you're best when you're in the box and you stay the width for the goals. That's where you score your goals. And I've done that, and I've gone on a little bit of a goal scoring run, so that's where the stats have helped me and the manager So it tells me where to run and what positions I should get myself into to help my game as much as possible and the team.
Competing against the Premier League's mega-rich requires creative thinking. To punch above their economic weight, Southampton created the Black Box, a live database collecting player metrics from every major league. This has enabled them to acquire players of undervalued talent and sell them on for a profit. Sadio Mane, Dejan Lovren, Morgan Schneiderlin, Victor Wanyama, the list goes on.
A lot of the KPIs that we look for the different positions is something else that's been consistent for quite a while. So a lot of the scouts know the type of players that we're looking for at the football club. So they'll already be creating scout reports for any players that they've seen up there, so they can recommend them to put on our target list and someone that we need to look at as a potential signing for the football club. But we'll also kind of use the data on a global scale to highlight any top performers, and from that will be an area that we need to provide some more scouting information on. So that'll be from the eye, from our scouts.
Yes, there are some players that will have been signed because their stats look good. Payet at West Ham was a good example. Gabriel at Arsenal was a good example of that kind of an approach. But that's really kind of missing the point. The point of analytics is just doing things differently. One of the reasons for these crazy prices that we're paying for players these days is that people get really wedded to one player. They think that this is the guy, we need to have him, and we're willing to pay over the odds. What data can help you do is generate options. That maybe find guys that are kind of like that other guy, or maybe who would fit into the team in a slightly different way. And it allows you to walk away from a bad deal. It allows you to walk away from a really expensive deal.
Football has actually been collecting the most data for the longest time. But football is the most complex sport. So it's low scoring, it's continuous, it's time varying, it's very strategic, okay? It's very subjective. So just say you and I were analysing a game, we could come up with different opinions. When you compare it to other sports like basketball, it's high scoring. Tennis and American football, they're segmented. Baseball, it's segmented. You know, it's very easy to do the analysis. You have a lot of data points. So the key for football is actually to come up with the right language and ask the right question for specific things. How was our formation? How did we press? How were we on set pieces? Did we attack by the counter attack? All these different things we have to learn directly from data.
You know, when I played, it was a video recorder, and looking at the game back now, we monitor them, you know, every day, and in terms of their sleep, their training, everything they do really is massive.
We may know more about the opposition than they actually know about themselves. Yeah, I think a coach's eye can see a certain amount. What the data does is just back that up. We can look at data of the team we're about to play, and we can break down strengths and weaknesses of the team that we're playing.
There was a game a few weeks ago, a game that we actually went on to win. In my opponent report, I noticed that the team played pretty deep, their average position was quite deep, and their pressing metrics weren't very high, so they allowed you a lot of time on the ball. I suggested that we'd be able to play a lot of football, and we did. We sort of passed them to death, really. And then I'd also highlighted an area where they were weak and they conceded a lot of shots. I said if we can get our key players in these areas, there's a fair chance we can score from here. And we actually scored our first goal in exactly that area.
Data in terms of pre-match, a lot of it is video-based, but in terms of statistical data, it's used to, I guess, to look at trends. So it won't be just from one game, we'll look from game to game and build up a database to kind of create a performance profile on that team and look at any individuals that are maybe performing to a higher level.
The Black Box also helps Southampton develop homegrown talent they can sell for huge profit. Data helps to drive player recruitment at academy level and to maximise the potential of their scholars.
I started training when I was 8 and then finally signed at 9, so quite a young age. I think when we first got it, it was just a load of numbers on a sheet, but now we understand what it actually is, the details of it, and where we can improve and what we need to look at. So it's helped me massively. I think when I first got it, I didn't really know what to do. It was sort of just watching the game. I wasn't really taking notice, but as I started to learn more, I think I focused on myself more and the positioning I'm taking up and all the little details you can sort of figure out what you have to do to be better, and so it's helped me massively develop.
A founding principle of this organisation
is youth development. It's everything we stand for, excellence, potential, it's a strap line, it's everything we work towards. And even when you buy a senior player, first team player, still the principle's the same. Can we improve him? Because we may be selling him, and if we are selling him, we need to be selling him for a profit. So it's all about improving that individual. It was never really the dream to produce a player to sell. It became the business model when first team started sliding through the leagues and then ultimately into administration. It was selling of players, Theo Walcott's and Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain's and Gareth Bale. We all, as fans and also as a staff member here, we all dream of what happens if we kept hold of those players, what would he have done? Well, the reality, if we kept hold of those players, we would have gone out of business. There's a huge amount of data that's collected around the players, from match day data to the way they sleep, to the way they're feeling in the morning, to training, their power outputs in the gym. The challenge is, what do we do with that data, and how important is it, the analytics around that data?
So on a daily basis, we collect information from players from GPS units. So we would look at distances covered, the speeds at which they're covered, and other information such as accelerations and decelerations. And we would use that in a more individualised approach, so we can optimally adjust their training programs to make sure that they're fresh and they're in peak condition come match day.
We're now in an amazing position where for the first time we're able to turn down those opportunities to sell players and push back against the big clubs and turn around and say no, not for sale.
Yeah, it's a huge point of the game now. I mean, obviously there's a lot of other sports that use data or heavy analytics. Soccer has not yet cracked, I don't think, the code yet in terms of what are the key indicators of what's going to make a player successful or not. I think there's several companies out there that aggregate the data and try to make it easier for you to make a decision. But at the end of the day, I think soccer people want to still see the player and see how that marries up with the data that you're seeing. Because sometimes the data doesn't always match what you're seeing on the field because of the free-flowingness of the game and the fluidity of the sport. Yeah, I think the mentality of a player, I think that sometimes the soccer IQ, and you're only going to get that from seeing sometimes live, obviously video as well, but also sitting down with that player and having a conversation with him about the game itself, about his particular skill set, about your own club's philosophy on the game, and see if there's a match there. And that, you can't get answers from that with data.
Analytics has come a long way from pass completion rates and heat maps. Some of the brightest minds in the game want to find an algorithm to calculate the most valuable intangibles, like team chemistry. What will this mean for the future of football?
All goals aren't created equal, and the ability to weight sort of the difficulty of those goals, the player with the skill set to do those things should be rewarded as a result, or as opposed to a guy who maybe just tapped one in because Suarez drew 3 defenders on him penetrating and then he flipped it off to him, the other guy just taps it in. Well, the goal gets paid for in today's world. But shouldn't the guy who created all those things, and measuring those things is really the challenge, and giving proper credit to player performance is what we're all trying to achieve, not just in baseball, but in every sport, just like in business.
So there's lots of cool stuff that people haven't thought about. So the idea of ghosting, be able to simulate plays that you haven't seen before. So you can have an example of a play and you can say, well, how does this team defend in that situation? What happens if I switch that player with another player? How does the outcome change? In terms of just body shape, okay, where's the player facing? Are they making right decisions? In terms of injury analytics, player load, fatigue, how's their technique changing over time? Now, using deep neural networks, we can actually simulate these things. I think in terms of injury prediction, I think you'll find there'll be less injuries. So there'll be less soft tissue injuries. You're still going to have the edge cases, but soft tissue injuries, I think they'll be minimised. I think in terms of player valuation, in terms of performance, I think that'll be normalised. I think you see the volatility now is because we haven't got these good metrics. However, what you don't take into consideration is the media. Okay, the media and the shirt sales, is all these other things that need to be taken into account.
You're never, I guess, going to have data just making a sole decision, I think, in anything. But as data advances and the individuals that are part of that process and are creating and maximising the use of data in clubs and in different sports, I think those people are more crucial in the process, and I think data becomes more important in what we do from day to day.
We have to communicate with domain experts, and if we can't speak their language, then we're basically not going to be let in.
It's an exciting area to be in because it's constantly evolving and improving as technology improves.
The genie is out of the bottle. I don't think it's going back in.
When you've got open-minded people, it works really well.
Hopefully it can tell us if we're going to win or lose. It'd be nice, wouldn't it? If the data can tell me we're going to get 3 points on the Saturday, it saves me an awful lot of work.